I worked specifically in Riverton and was in charge of all of our technology hiring. We have about 1,500 technology professionals in the Riverton location that focus on all of the technology that the missionaries have on their devices, or all of the meeting house technology in the buildings, or the temple technology, or the just all the different areas where the church has technology, the websites and the apps and things of that nature. And then for the last year, I've been focused globally on all of the other areas that we have hiring needs. So working a lot with the areas. So hiring in outside of the United States, and doing all of the additional hiring that goes on here at the church headquarters, just up the street. So
perfect, yeah. And your how many wife, kids?
Oh, I have a smoking hot wife.
Mm-hmm. We all do that work at the church office building. That's kind of one of the prerequisites. So
I've been married for 27 years, and I have 3 kids of my own. My daughter is a freshman at BYU, and she is studying computer science. And I have a high school junior at Pleasant Grove High School that thinks he's pretty cool. And I have a 12-year-old son as well. So that's us.
Cool, thanks. Well, I take it away, and you guys, if you have questions, hopefully you looked over Canvas and looked at some of the questions there, and we'll let Sean have a minute to present, and then I'm sure he'll have open for questions afterwards, right?
Yes, definitely. So if you have questions along the way, then go ahead and fire them at me. But this is what I thought that I would talk about a little bit today. First of all, how do we attract a recruiter? How do you get on the recruiter's radar in the first place? Once that has happened, how do I get ready for an interview? When I go to the interview, what do I do in the interview to impress the recruiter or the person that you're talking to? And then what should I be doing after the interview is over? And then we can have any questions and answers. If I've missed anything specifically that you're interested in, I'm happy to stay as long as you like and answer questions. Okay, so first of all, how do I get on the recruiter's radar? There are 3 main things that each of you need to do to impress a recruiter or to get on the recruiter's radar. First thing is that you need to have confidence. You need to be confident in your ability to do whatever job it is that you are applying for. The more confident that you can project and that you can show that you are in the skills that you have, the more excited we will be to speak with you about whatever it is that you're applying for. So a couple of things that will help you to increase that confidence, and I was glad that you mentioned the LinkedIn profile or the LinkedIn connection here. But the number one thing that I tell people to do is to go onto LinkedIn and create a very good LinkedIn profile. Okay, there's coaching that you can get online. You can, if you just send an email to LinkedIn, they will have people there that will help you to prepare that profile. And there's just so many things. That is, LinkedIn is the number one site that the church goes to. I've been here in Utah for 7 years now. Every company that I've worked for here in Utah, every company that I've worked for before that in Portland, the number one place recruiters go to look for people is LinkedIn. Number 2 is Indeed. Okay, so but first and foremost, you need to have a good LinkedIn profile. Okay, what are some things that would be needed on a LinkedIn profile?
Job experience.
Okay, job experience is great.
Your skills.
What's that?
Your skills.
Okay, great.
Recommendation. Professional headshot photo.
Okay, profile picture, right? The LinkedIn team will tell you, they'll give you some tips and some tricks that will help your profile picture to stand out. One thing that they've told me is that it should be a picture of you only. A lot of times there's a picture of you and your spouse or you and your kids or whatever, and it's so small that it's hard to see on a PC. or that it should be slightly off-center for some reason. Instead of being right here in the center, you should have your picture just a little bit to the side. So there's also a background view that you can put on there. All these things recruiters look at because it gives everything that's on your LinkedIn profile gives you a little bit more insight about who you are and what type of individual you are. You should have friends check it, or teachers check it, or somebody else check it for spelling errors and typos and things of that nature. Attention to detail is a big part of attracting the right recruiter. Yeah.
On the headshot, like how, I know you want to project confidence, but you don't want to project necessarily being too confident or over the top, or have like a really stylized headshot, I would imagine. You probably want something that represents you without.
Right. So I'm not saying go get a glamour shot, right? Or something of that nature, but if you have, mine is pretty similar to what I'm wearing right now without my tie, right? And so it's just a picture of me or a picture of you dressed nicely as you would go for an interview. If they want to see what you look like in other clothes, they'll go to your Facebook page, or they'll find you somewhere else and or your Instagram and learn about you there. But so really that LinkedIn profile is the key, the very first and most important thing. Also on there, further down on your profile, you can get recommendations from people for the work that you have done. Okay, so I would recommend, it's easy to send out. It's a two-step process. You click on the link that says I want to send a referral request, a recommendation request, and then it just asks you to type in a little message that says I'm trying to bolster my LinkedIn profile. Will you write a resume or write a referral for me on the work I did for you at whatever location. Okay. So you can send those, you can receive those, and you can also send them out for other people that you have worked with in the past. So even if you're just getting started and you know somebody else that is in the similar situation where they're looking for one as well, maybe you write one for them and they write one for you, and it gives you a little bit of start on your LinkedIn profile. Your profile should pretty much mirror your resume, okay? In a second, I'm going to talk about standout, so I'm going to just move on to the next one. Create a profile on Indeed. Pretty simple. You just basically go upload your resume onto Indeed, pick out the types of jobs that you're interested in, and then you set an alert. And you can set it up so you receive something every day, or you receive something every week, depending on how busy you are, how often you want to look at different openings that are available. I do this even when I'm not looking for jobs, because I want to know what jobs are out there that maybe I'm missing out on, or what jobs are out there that other people that work for me, maybe I could help them to find something better based on whatever their current situation is as well. You want to make sure that you tailor your resume for each and every position that you are applying for. Sometimes that's a little bit more difficult because it takes you 10 or 15 minutes more to do that each and every time. But realistically, recruiters are a little bit lazy. We are looking at hundreds of resumes every day. So there needs to be something that's going to catch our eye in the top 1/3 of the resume, that's going to help me to read on further down the resume and find something about you that's interesting that makes you stand out from the rest of your peers, right? So if you have your education at the very top of your resume, I'm guessing everybody else that's applying for a position with me also has an education. Okay, so that's not really going to help you to get this job, so I bump that down to the bottom. If there's certain skills that you possess in this position, if I'm looking for somebody that does some software design or some coding or something of that nature, and you have those skills and you list them at the top, that might help me to look down a little bit further. If you're listing coursework that you've taken, or if that project that you've done in class, if everybody else that's applying for this position has done that same thing, you have to be able to find something that will help you to differentiate yourself. Maybe that's an internship, maybe that's some volunteer work that you've done. whatever it is, something that will help you to stand out and make an impression with me and get me interested to read down a little bit further. Yeah.
How much does graphic design layout of the resume affect you at all? Nothing. It's just
Not very much, honestly. You know, I kind of got caught up in that when I was about your age and applying for my first job and wanting to make my name, you know, bigger and blue. The rest of the thing was in black and white, right?
Mhm.
And somebody once, I don't know, maybe it was my mom, somebody told me that would catch the recruiter's eye. Honestly, we see so many different resumes, and by the time we are done copying them and sending them out to other people that might be looking at them as well, they're not going to be in color when they get to somebody else besides the initial person that you intend to send it to. So really, it's not too much of a help unless you're applying for a designer position.
okay.
Right? If you're applying for some sort of design position or something where you need to show your work, show a portfolio, then I would say yes, that the design of your resume and the creativity that you put into it is very important. But if you're going for any other type of job, it's really not that important.
Okay, that's
We're
good.
looking more at the content of what's inside of it than how it's presented.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last thing that I have on here.
Oh, sorry. One more thing on that.
Yeah.
On the resume, cover letters.
You will get, there's kind of two schools of thought. Depending on, and I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to, depending on how old the person is that is receiving your resume, the older they are, the more they may like a cover letter, because it's kind of a thing of the past. It's not as important for me or for my team. Again, we're more interested in getting to the meat of the actual resume. I honestly don't even read the cover letter. You know, and so maybe I shouldn't say that.
Would there be any negative in not including a cover letter at this? You know,
There's no negative including a cover letter, right? Or not including a cover letter. If you just send your resume or you send your resume with a cover letter, I look at them actually as exactly the same, right? And it's more with the content that the skills that you've done, more so than if you have a cover letter or not. Okay? Some people, I mean, if you are, there's certain positions at the church where right now I'm looking for a secretary to the quorum of the 70.
Mhm.
And there are only going to be 4 or 5 people that we are going to present to the quorum of the 70. And so in that case, if I had a cover letter, that would be actually more helpful to me because it would give me more information about that individual. Whereas if I'm trying to fill a software developer in Riverton, I'm probably going to present 20 people, and the manager doesn't have time to read 20 cover letters and 20 resumes. So they just want the resume and a quick little paragraph about that individual.
It's good to know.
Yeah.
So if you had like I have a personally designed like letterhead, would that be beneficial to have to use in the resume or no?
Honestly, I don't know that it matters one way or the other.
Okay.
Can you be too outlandish? I mean, you can try to get attention with graphic design, but can it be like, all right, this guy is just silly and I'm not going to look at that because
It can be silly, and sometimes it'll give the recruiter a laugh. I don't know that it necessarily deters, again, because of the fact that really we're interested in what you can do, more so than how you present it.
okay. Thank you.
All right, so last one, video. You mentioned that you've done a video interview before with the church.
Mhm.
Has anybody else done a video interview? Okay, great. What was your experience?
To be honest, I didn't love it.
Okay.
Because I thought for some reason that the video interview is like there's someone on the other side, and maybe it makes you less nervous that there's not someone on the other side. But at the same time, I think that I'm not as natural. I think too much about what I'm going to say. So then I feel like I'm not being myself. I'm just thinking all the time of what the other person wants me to say.
And I agree 100% with that.
That was my experience as well. I'm like, take 13. Okay.
And you say something, and then you're like, "Oh crap!
Yeah.
Start over."
Yeah.
Anyway, the church does use video interviews though, because as much as people kind of run into roadblocks or mess up a little bit, again, it's not as important as what you say. It's not as important how you say it as what is behind it. So even if you do mess up a little bit, that's okay. The piece that I'm getting at for this though is when you do take one of these video interviews, they're a little bit nerve-wracking, right? You're talking into a video, your computer, and it's just a video recorded question and a video recorded answer. And what you want to do is you want to make it as professional as possible, so the person that is watching the video doesn't have any distractions. They don't see anything or hear anything that is going to detract them from listening to what you're saying. So try and have it in a professional setting. If you have a den in your home, or if you can get one of the conference rooms here at the school, or if there's something like that where you can go and it's just a nice kind of quiet environment where you can sit at a table and be comfortable, then that's what I'd recommend. I've seen people do them sitting on the floor in a room like this, holding the laptop up at their face, and it wasn't very professional. And for me, I was trying to figure out for the first 3 questions where they were, and I wasn't listening to anything that they were saying, and so it was a distraction. You should be dressed as if you were going into the interview for that video interview. Even if and I've done this before too, where I'm at home in my den wearing this top and wearing shorts, right? And so they couldn't see that part, and that was fine. But it's from what they're seeing up here that I look presentable, and don't have my hair messed up, or I don't have whatever going on with me that I don't want somebody else to see. I want to focus on what you're saying, not how you look or the environment that you're in. We talked a little bit about that, just making sure that you have something to differentiate yourself in your experience or on your resume, and if you don't have something that's different than everybody else, go volunteer somewhere, right? Go do something that will give you that experience that will help you to get that, to be able to stand out a little bit. Yeah.
So my question is this: I feel like sometimes when I take interviews or I take a video interview, I can come off a little like rehearsed. Does that make a difference, me sounding rehearsed compared to me sounding natural?
I don't think so. A lot of the ones that the video interviews, the ones that the church does, we actually give you a minute or 3 minutes actually to prepare your thoughts on how you want to respond to that. So I usually recommend having a piece of paper and a pencil next to you so you can write down what you want, how you want to respond to that, and then you can refer back to your notes so you're not forgetful of what it is that you wanted to say. Usually you only have 2 or 3 minutes to answer the question, and then you go on to the next one. But I don't think that it's bad if you sound rehearsed. I think that we expect you to be practiced and I would look at it as more prepared than rehearsed. All right, so I have a video. I apologize, it may be a little bit grainy.
What was to have a plan? Oh, okay, cool.
Coming up, right?
I'm so excited.
Good one.
What makes you think you qualify for this job?
Stop punching me!
Punching
Please! Let me out!
Good, huh? Good.
Of course he Okay. They had a plan. So,
Good
that's,
plan.
right, just have some sort of plan, right? Think about what you're doing, prepare for it, and follow some of these tips and you'll do well in the interview process. Okay, so before the interview, a few of these things seem like there's total common sense, but you'd be amazed. Like I said, I've been a recruiter for more than 20 years, and I have seen everything for professional interviews, people coming in sweatpants, coming in look like they slept on the floor and rolled around on the carpet and had lint all over them, and their hair wasn't done, or somebody had a mole on their chin and had a hair that was probably that long that grew out of their hair, out of their chin, out of the mole. And seriously, I don't remember one thing that person said. I didn't remember that person's name. All I was just focusing on the whole time was just, I wanted to grab it and pull it out. So, make sure that your clothes are clean, ironed, and matching, okay? My dad taught me this a long time ago, and it's only gonna help the men in the room. I'm sorry, I apologize, ladies. But two things need to match every single time you leave the house, okay? One, your belt and your shoes need to match, and your shirt and tie and your socks need to coordinate, okay? That's the only thing that I've stuck with as far as matching goes, and it's done well. So, again, shower, deodorant, breath mint, ponytail does not count as a shower. Not too much cologne or too much perfume. Why do you think those things are important?
It's a distraction.
What's that?
It's kind of like a distraction.
Exactly.
As the guy had the hair here,
Yeah.
or someone.
That's exactly right, right? It's a distraction. If I'm focused on the way that you smell, good or bad, if I'm focused on the way that you look or how you're dressed, I'm not focused on what you're saying. And I want to be focused 100% on what you're saying and how you're answering the questions that I have. I promise you that the recruiter, the manager, if you're there for the interview, they want to hire you. Okay? If we don't want to hire you, it's a waste of our time. And so we really want to hire you, so we want to focus on everything that you have to say and you to kill it in the interview. But if there's distractions, then we won't be able to focus on those things. Drive to the office. I would say do that at least once before the interview. So day of, you don't get lost or you don't think that Google's sending me to the wrong place, or for whatever reason, it took me 45 minutes to get there and I thought it would take me 20, right? I've been there before, I've done it before. If my interview's during first thing in the morning, I'm gonna try and drive it once in rush hour traffic, see what it's like to get there. It's probably gonna be different than it is gonna be at lunchtime or some other time. You wanna practice interviewing questions, right? You want to, the more practiced you are, the better you're gonna be. And when you're actually in the interview, it's gonna be a little bit more nerve-wracking, right? Somebody's gonna ask you a question and you're gonna be a little bit nervous. And the more that you've practiced your answers, either with your roommates or your spouse or friends, the better you're gonna be able to answer that question, right? When I was applying for a job, one of my first jobs out of college, I would have my wife every single time I came home from work or from school or from whatever, she would ask me, who are you, and tell me about yourself, right? And so before I could go change, or before I could eat any food, or before I could do anything that I wanted to do, I had to answer her question, right? And so I got better and better and better at answering that question and other questions that we practiced. Again, when you're sitting in your car or you're getting ready to go to the interview, you just want to quickly check yourself in the mirror, right? Do I have anything in my teeth? Right? Is my zipper up? Whatever else there is, you just want to make sure that you are your best self. Again, avoiding that distraction. Last thing, nervous energy. This is things like cracking your knuckles, or swiveling in your chair, chewing gum, or clicking a pen. Again, all things that could distract the manager or the person that you're talking to from listening to what you have to say. Okay, who is the first person, or when does the interview start, and who is the first person that is interviewing you? What's that?
First person that sees you as you walk in the building.
Who did you say, the secretary, right? I don't think they're technically, except for in the church headquarters, called secretaries anymore. But yes, that is the right person, right? The very first person that greets you when you walk in the door. I, for many years, have gone to that person and told them that I was interviewing and told them that I wanted to get their opinion at the end of the day on the different candidates that they saw. How did they react when they didn't think somebody was looking at them? Were they nervous? Were they rude to that individual that was there to help them? Were they polite? Did they get to know them? Did they strike up a conversation? How did they interact with that person, that first person that they met with? Okay? When you get to the interview, when the interviewer comes out and says, okay, I can take you back to the interview now, you want to shake that person's hand, you want to make eye contact with them, you want to smile, you can talk about small talk or whatever, weather or the sports or whatever's going on until you get into the doorway of the room that you're going in to interview. And then once you step in the doorway, it should be the business version of you now, there for the purpose of helping you to get this job as opposed to being social at that point. Always take 3 questions with you. So many times when I am interviewing people, they will not come with any questions. Every single time somebody will ask you at the end of your interview, I promise you, do you have any questions for us? And if you say no, it makes me think instantly that maybe you're not as interested in this as I thought you were, right? It could be easy questions. It could be about, tell me about the team environment, or tell me about the culture there, or tell me about the history of the company, or how long have you been here, and how do you like it? It could be anything really, but ask a couple of questions. It just really lets me know that you're interested and that you were prepared and that you thought about it ahead of time.
Would asking about payment not be a good idea? Like, how much am I gonna get paid?
Salary.
Salary
Yeah,
wise?
that's probably not a good idea, and especially in the first interview. As you come back in for a second or third interview, then I think that that's fine to discuss compensation a little bit. But in the first interview, I want to know that you're interested in the company, and I want to know that that you can do the work, right? If I know that you're just interested in being there because it pays $10.50 an hour instead of $9 an hour, then I'm less interested.
Maybe I need to stop doing that. Okay, thanks.
All right. Okay, who can tell me what behavioral questions are? Yeah?
Are they the questions that are like, in this situation, what did you do?
Excellent. Yes, exactly right. So they're situational questions, right? So they're gonna constantly, they want to see
Oh, yeah.
past performances will indicate how you handle future problems, right? So if you had an experience before that dealt with a certain situation that they might have in this new position, they want to know how you handled that, okay? And these are just a few of them, right? How you handle challenge. Give me an example of something. Tell me about a time when you worked on a certain project. Tell me about some time when you worked with a difficult personality, and what did you do to overcome it? What was the result? Yeah.
What if you don't have an answer?
Yeah.
What if you don't have an experience that pertains to that specific situation?
I would say never, ever lie in an interview because you'll get caught, right? So I would say, I would just be honest. If they say, tell me about a time when you worked with children. Well, I really haven't worked with children to this point in my career. Or maybe I taught a primary class, or I have a younger brother or sister and I babysat them before or helped them with their homework. But, so you can probably find something that ties in some way or another, but I would say don't lie. If they'll be more impressed with you by saying, I actually don't have that experience and I don't want to mislead you that I do, than if you try and stumble around making something up. Okay? There is a certain acronym that I want you guys to remember today, that it is in reference to behavioral or interview or these types of questions. So the acronym is STAR, and it stands for situation, task, action, and result. So anytime that you get one of these questions asked of you, tell me about a time when you worked with whatever, right? Or tell me about a time when you worked with a difficult person. What did you do, and what was the result, right, of your action? So again, you want to set the situation a little bit. Well, a couple years ago, or last week, I worked with a service missionary who's on my team, and he didn't like to work as hard as I wanted him to, right? So I gave him a couple of so whatever I did, what was the action, and then what was the result in the end overall. So if you remember that, if you can just remember STAR going in, you'll cover all the bases of what it is that the person is trying to get. Yeah.
So is this, I think I've had interviews with, is this how they take notes? That's what I was,
Yes.
because I've had a couple of interviews where I've been asked questions like that a lot. And I feel like when I was going, the first time I did understand where they wanted me to go, because I had just moved to this country and I didn't know. But then I started noticing that they were taking notes in that way. So I was thinking, if I don't go over one of those things, then there will be something blank, and that's definitely not going to answer their question.
If they're a good interviewer, usually they'll prompt you a little bit. So if they see that you describe the situation and the task at hand, but you skipped what your action was, that may prompt you a little bit and say, tell me about what specifically you did in this situation to help, and that was the result of that. So, it's not a trick, right? We're not trying to trick you and help you to get something wrong. I want you to get everything right, but if you can remember those 4 things when you're giving your answers, then it will help you to do much better in the interview process. Okay, at the beginning of every interview, the person's gonna say, tell me about yourself, right? You asked me today, right? Every single time, it doesn't matter how many interviews you're doing with the company, how many different people you're meeting with, they're all gonna ask you this. What's your elevator pitch? In 90 seconds, tell me a little about yourself. You don't wanna give your entire personal life story, but you do wanna make it memorable enough that they're gonna remember you. Usually when I am interviewing for a position, I'll throw out one personal thing about myself that shows that I can do tough things. So in my lifetime, I have climbed 3 mountains and I've run the longest relay race in the world. Okay? And so that's all I give them. And if they're interested and they want to know more and they're curious, then they'll ask me more. And then it gives me a way for me to get comfortable in the interview process, talking about myself, telling them about a story that I'm comfortable with, and it helps to break the ice between the two of us. And then later on, when they come back and they're looking at their finalists that they have, they're gonna remember, oh yeah, this is the guy that ran the marathon, right? Or this is the guy that climbed the mountains. Yeah.
You just answered my question. Does that make you mountain climber guy in the discussions of the people who are doing interviews?
Right.
Okay.
So that's honestly, that's how I will get referred to probably throughout the rest of the interview process amongst everybody else that's in the room, right? Not in front of me, but when I'm out of the room, they'll say, oh, mountain climber guy.
Right.
Right? And that gives them a way to remember me as opposed to everybody else, all the other resumes, again, that, something in them, they're looking for a way to stand out. Yeah.
Would it be better to say something that wasn't relevant than not say anything at all about yourself? Like if you don't, I don't have an exciting life. So would it be better?
Earl.
Don't judge me. Would it be better to say something that you enjoy doing that doesn't pertain to the job rather than not saying anything at all?
Yeah, I would say that it's better to say something. It doesn't necessarily matter what it is, but just something about you. It can be you served a mission somewhere. It can be that you like to do volunteer work with horses. It could be, that you whatever it is. Maybe it's a little nerdy. Maybe it's you like to play live action games, or you like to do Dungeons and Dragons, or whatever it is, something like that.
You know how to read a room, don't you?
I'm a Dungeons and Dragons Warlord level 13.
Where did that come from?
You know what? Maybe it was the pink unicorn on your shirt. Right?
Yeah, a little bit.
But you know, having something, even saying something like that, and then everybody else in the room are like, "Hey, Dungeons and Dragons guy was a stud," right? I remember him. He talked a little bit about his experience here, and that's makes you memorable, right? That helps you to stand out. Yes.
I was thinking you could just say like a random story about yourself. I was thinking it needs still to be like relevant to the job, like to what you want to say about
Right.
you, or-
And if you have something that's relevant to the job, then great. I think that's perfect, right? But if you don't, or I would say that you can tie in anything to the job, right? I can say that I do hard things. I don't like to shy away from difficult things, and that's why climbing 3 mountains and running the longest relay race appealed to me, because it was hard. I had to train for it and I had to prepare for it. That's the same way that I'm going to go to work for you. When you give me tasks, I'm going to train for them, I'm going to study for them, I'm going to prepare, so I can give a good deliverable at the end. If I like to have fun playing role action games or live play game, whatever they're called, if I like to do that, I like to bring fun to the job. I like to interact with my coworkers, and I like to make it a light situation, so that more work is going to get done and better work's going to get done. Yeah.
Does this apply also to your LinkedIn profile when you have your like skill description? If you put something like that in there that helps you stand out on LinkedIn, does that work as well in that?
I think if you go down to that one section and you do it there, I wouldn't put pink unicorns all over your profile or things of that nature. You want to keep this one site professional. Facebook, Instagram, other things like that you can have your fun with those things. But for LinkedIn, you want it to be 99% professional. But when it does say personal interest, then I don't have any problem with somebody saying that that's what they like to do.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. After the interview, when you're actually the very last step before you leave the interview, if you are interested in this job, please tell the person that you're interviewing, I'm really excited about this opportunity. I'd love to learn more. I want this job. Okay? Just let them know. A lot of times, so many people leave an interview and they don't ever say anything. And after everybody's wrapping up, question that often comes up is, do you think this person really wants this job? Or are they just looking for a couple bucks an hour more? Or they just need a job, right? Do they really want this opportunity? And if so, why, right? So again, I want this job, I'm very interested in this job. It can be when you're standing up at the end, shaking hands with the person, saying thank you for the interview. You can just say that, thank you for the interview. I want you to know I'm super excited about this opportunity. Okay, next thing, when should I expect to hear from you? Again, reinforces that you want this job and that you're on top of things, that you're following. When is it okay for me to follow back up with you if I haven't heard? Right? If I haven't heard from you in 2 weeks, can I give you a call? What's the best way for me to communicate with you? Is that calling you over the phone? Is that shooting you an email, sending you a text, etc.? Okay? Thank you letter. Any thank you letter is better than no thank you letter, right? So if you send an email, that's better than not sending anything at all. I personally prefer to do, I have a stack of thank you letters inside of the console in my car. And so when I walk out in the interview, I bring a notebook and a pencil or a pen, and then every time that I talk to somebody new, I write down their name and their title, and I try and write down one thing that they tell me throughout the interview process. And so when I'm writing my thank you letter, I can say, hey, thank you for your time that you spent with me today. I really appreciated when you shared your experience, what it was like to work at the company. Right? And sign my name and give it back to the receptionist at the end. And I usually give one to the receptionist as well. right? Thank you for helping to calm my nerves when I first got there. You were great to talk to. I hope I get to work with you someday. Yeah, whatever it is. So, about I don't know, a year ago, I went to an interview and interviewed with 7 people on a team. Afterwards, I went back in, took those 7 thank you notes after I spent about 40 minutes in my car writing them out. They called me back the next morning on a conference call with all of them together and said, thank you for these thank you notes. They were awesome. I knew the person that was the hiring authority, and they said, this thank you note thing was awesome. Every single person on the team is talking about you right now, as opposed to any of the other people we talked to. And so that's what I want. I want my resume on the top of the pile, right? I want to differentiate. I want to know that I'm interested and I can do this work. I always thank the receptionist with the name. I always, it's just a personal thing. I want them to know that I appreciate them and what they've done for me. All right, I think that's all I've got. So questions? Oh, there's one other video, but we don't need to show it. Yeah.
So a lot of times we look at Indeed and it says that we need to send over a portfolio. What should we send over? Since like most of us haven't worked with a company yet, we just done stuff in class, and a lot of those companies don't think of it as professional work. So what can we send over as a portfolio?
So when you do class assignments, do you save the final project? Do you, depending on what it is, you may send that attached to your resume, depending on, if it's really long, I don't know that I would send that. But if there's pieces in there that you can say, hey, so another, I guess a kind of a little pet peeve that recruiters have is when somebody says, I have experience with Java because I worked on a project in school and Java was used, right? Or I have experience with design because I've used HTML was used. What part of that project, my first question would be, what part of that project did you work on? Did you code in HTML or Java? If you didn't do that, then you can't really say that you have Java or HTML experience, right? You got something else from there. You gained something by participating, but I would just say be clear on what your role was on the projects that you've worked on. But I would say go into your project and take a look at what you did, and if your part wasn't significant enough to brag about it or to share it with somebody, then I would go in and say, as a team, we collaborated and completed this project. And then I would go through those 4 star questions again. So you're outlining what the situation was, what the task at hand was, what action we took as a group, and what the result was of that. And if you share that as part of the portfolio, I think that it helps to explain it better to those that are reviewing it. What else? Yeah.
I have a question about like a specific situation, but there was a time I had an interview, and I'm from Argentina, so the job position was for Spanish and English. And when they asked me about my Spanish skills, I said, well, I'm from Argentina, so that's my first language. And then the person that was interviewing me had served right in the place where I live. And he started talking about that, and I didn't know if that was like a tricky question, like if he wanted me to talk about that, and I of course wanted to like have not a friendship, but yes, I wanted him to like me, so I'm gonna talk about my country, but that wasn't related to the job, so I didn't know where to what to answer.
So again, it goes back to what I shared before, and if you know this, when you're going in for the interview, I promise you, it's never gonna be very rarely is it gonna be a trick, right? Most of the time, 99% of the time, they want to hire you for this job going in. They've looked at you on paper, they decided, I wanna hire one of these 3 people that I'm bringing in for the interview. I hope that it's you when you come in to meet with me. Because if it is, then I don't have to keep doing this, right? I don't have to, well, a lot of people don't like the hiring process. They don't want to continue to look at resumes and continue to interview people. They want to do it 1 or 2 or 3 times and be done with it. And so if you know that, then it gives you an opportunity to be professional or to be confident. And I would say anytime that people ask you specifically about your country or anything like that, I would definitely share. Only one time, I'll tell you about one time that I was tricked in an interview. There was a panel of people, and there was probably 10 in the room that were interviewing me, and every single time I gave an answer to a question, no matter what the question was, that person would say, write some notes down, right? Every time, write some down. And by the end of the thing, I was like, all right, I hate this person, right? I wanted to, whatever. And at the end of the interview process, I ended up getting the job. And the day after I got the job, that lady came into my office and said, I want to apologize. Said, my whole job was to try and get you nervous or show anxiety or get you frustrated or whatever to see how you would react in a difficult situation. And you did well, and I just wanted to apologize now that we're going to be working together. But, so that was the only time that I've been kind of tricked like that. But sharing any experience or history or anything about yourself, I don't think it's bad ever. Where in Argentina?
Buenos Aires.
River Boca.
We lost yesterday.
Yes.
Which mountain did you go?
I climbed Mount St. Helens in Washington. I climbed Mount Hood in Oregon, and I climbed Mount Fuji in Japan.
What was the hardest?
What's your next one?
The hardest one was Mount Hood because it was more technical, and we actually had to rope up, and it was with a group of people, and so you could only go as fast as the slowest person in the group because the altitude was so thin when we got to near the top. The easiest one was probably Mount St. Helens because it had exploded or blown, and so it wasn't as tall. And it was probably more fun too because on the way down, most of the climb was in the snow, and on the way down we could sit on a piece of tarp and just slide down most of the way.
Slide down the bird. What's your next mountain? The K2.
No. My brother told me the other day that he wants to climb that though, so I'm probably just going to support him. I don't know that my next mountain is going to be some metaphorical answer that I'm going to
What about
give back,
Rainier?
but-
Since you're in the PNW all the time, so let's go Rainier.
Maybe. Yes.
So you said that you're a recruiter for the church?
Yes,
So do you
ma'am.
do all of their interviews, or do you have people underneath you that do all the interviews?
Both. So depending on the position, I recruit for positions as well. And there's 10 people that work for me that also are constantly interviewing people for different jobs in the church.
Do you like doing that? Because you said some people don't like interviewing. Do you enjoy
Yes, so when I read that, I'm talking about usually the hiring managers that we're working with. So we're interviewing people on their behalf to try and help them to find the right person. They would rather be, the engineering manager would rather be doing engineering work than interviewing people and trying to find people to come and do things for their team. So those individuals typically are not in love with the interviewing themselves, but we like it. We've been doing it for a long time, and I like to speak with people and get to know people and that they're from Argentina and things like that, and it just makes life a little bit more interesting. Yes.
Have you ever failed in thinking that
Many
a
times.
candidate was, and how do you deal with that? Because the reason I'm asking is back home, I'm from Brazil. So I was once with to the interview. I was very junior, as a financial analyst. But the thing is, my boss didn't speak English, and so he did the whole process ahead. And the only thing he wanted me to do was like, okay, I need you to do that for me, right? So I went and did it, and we need to hire 2 people. So one was great, and the second one turned out to be really bad. But somehow he did really well in the interview. Like, we talked. So then, you know, I got 50% right and 50% frustrated, and you're joking about it. But I think that like has always bugged me ever since, because it's like, how do you HR like deal with that, and like how do you work to improve?
Yeah.
So you
We're-
don't keep.
You know,
Yeah.
you're not always gonna get it right? There's gonna be times when you interview somebody and they do an amazing job in the interview, and you think that you killed it, and then a couple months later, you realize that they were really good at interviewing and not so good at the work that they were hired to do.
How
And
much does it affect you as a professional in the company? Because I feel like, you know, it's like, oh, well, I did this bad job, so now they're gonna have to fire and do the whole process again, and yeah, they don't wanna be interviewing people, and you feel bad, and you know, or not
you know,
really.
I think that that's just part of the job. I think that, you know, as I mentioned before, the most important thing that I look for is confidence. So the most important thing that I want to portray is confidence in my ability to do the job. I've been doing it for a long time. When I go sit down with a hiring manager, first thing I say is, look, you're the engineering manager, and you are the expert at engineering. I'm the recruiting manager, and I'm expert at recruiting. This is how we're gonna go ahead in the process. And we may get it right every time, we probably won't. We'll probably get it wrong once or twice. And if we do, hopefully we can learn from that and pull something out that maybe we had a little bit of a gut feeling, but they answered it correctly. Or maybe we had, there was something that we just didn't pay as close attention to as we should have, and that will help us to do a better job hiring in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I recently heard that when you're going into an interview, it's not just you're being interviewed for a position, you're also interviewing that company to see if you're a right fit.
Correct.
What are some red flags as an interviewee that you should be looking for? That like, I really don't want to be working with this company.
Well, I think you have to look at what's important to you, but for me, I would say, tell me about the work-life culture, right? The work-life balance. If I know that I'm gonna be working 60 hours a week, maybe that's a little bit more than I'm ready for at this point, right? I have, as I shared with you earlier, I have a young 12-year-old son and a son that's a junior in high school, and I coach both of their flag football teams and I coach both of their baseball teams. And if I'm gonna be working 60 hours a week, I know that that's not gonna work with my family lifestyle. And so that would be a red flag for me. Eventually you're gonna talk about compensation, right? And if compensation is not right where I can maintain my lifestyle that I'm accustomed to, or with a little bit of a stretch, then as much as I love the job, if it doesn't work out for what I'm looking for compensation wise, it's probably not gonna work in the long run. I would say, I would ask the person that you're interviewing with if you're gonna be reporting to that person or not. And if you are gonna report to that person, what's their management style like? Are they a micromanager? Do they give you the opportunity to perform? Do they give you a little bit of direction and then let you loose and do they empower you to do your work? You just have to identify internally what it is that you're specifically most interested in, and then you can tailor your questions that way.
Just want to bring up one point. It is noon. If you guys have to go, you can. But are you willing to stay for a few more minutes? If you guys want to. Okay, thanks. Appreciate that.
So, just going back to the compensation thing, when is it the appropriate, like when's the mark to when you can talk about compensation and negotiation of salary, if it is possible to negotiate salary?
Right, I would say that sometime in the second interview is probably the earliest that I would do that. You could probably, if there's more interviews after that, but if you know that you can do the work and you're interested, and what is keeping you from being very interested is not knowing what this compensation range is, I think that it's fine to say, can you tell me a little bit about the compensation structure? How does it work? And, are there, are there bonuses for good performance? Or, what does the performance structure look like and how does it work? Or something of that nature, right? So it's not just saying, how much you get paid, right? But tell me a little bit more about that process and how it works.
What's your definition of micromanager? Because I've heard several different ones. So
Micromanager to me is just somebody that's constantly looking over my shoulder, telling me, hey,
How to do
you
your
fix
job.
this or do this better or do that different or whatever.
Okay.
The term is a marionette.
I don't think my last one wasn't much very great.
So everybody got it? Let's
Thank you.
Thank
give
you.
Brother McKeehan a big hand. Thank you, guys. That was awesome. Thank you so much. Actually, no, what I did wrong in my video.
Yeah.
Well, it was like the recorder emailed me like one hit the day. And said, we have like a, you need to be turned in by midnight tonight. And I was like, oh. So I ran down to my man cave in like my workout clothes. I just got home from the gym and I had all my like superhero memorabilia behind me.
That's fine.
And I'm like, yeah, and I answered all the questions for the church thing with my workout clothes and the nerd stuff behind me. So I probably should have. Yeah, I knew the hiring manager, and so I thought, oh, they know me, it's not, I'm gonna fool them by being professional, so I thought it'd be, but you're right, in this situation, it's probably best with your best foot forward, instead of good personality or whatever it is with that too, so. Anyway, thanks a lot.
Na verdade, né, eu lancei, fui fazer umas coisas, porque eu não gosto muito de queijo.
É, se você te falar